At 11:23 a.m. on February 18, 2026, Jacksonville rapper Lil Papa was found dead in Atlanta at just 25 years old. But here's what's really wild. He predicted his own death in his lyrics, saying, "Pac died at 25, Biggie died at 24, and it made me nervous. I just turned the same age a couple days ago." 12 hours before he died, he posted this cryptic message that nobody understood until it was too late. Lil Papa was CMG's rising star, signed to Yo Gotti's label with millions of monthly listeners on Spotify. But behind the success, this young man was carrying pain that most people couldn't even imagine. The Jacksonville rapper who survived when all his homies didn't, who turned his trauma into Purple Hearts, one of the realest pain songs ever made. His death didn't just shock the hip-hop world, it exposed how we failed to see the warning signs that were right in front of us. To understand how Lil Papa's final 24 hours really went down, we gotta go back to where it all started. Let's rewind to March 18, 2000, when Janarius Michael Willer was born in Jacksonville, Florida, a city where the murder rate is over 2 times the national average. Back then, Jacksonville was already becoming a breeding ground for some of the most authentic pain rap you'd ever hear, but it came at a cost that nobody talks about. Papa's early life was unstable from the jump. He bounced between his mom's place on the east side and his grandma's crib on the west side, never really having one solid home base. His mom, trying to keep him out of trouble, made him go to church at a young age. That's where he discovered music, fam. Started rapping at just 6 years old, writing Christian rhymes to perform at church every Thursday. His older brother Chi-Chi was the one who really taught him how to rap. Chi-Chi had been in the game first, and when Lil Papa showed interest, his big brother took him under his wing. But what made Papa different was his natural ability. He just picked it up and ran with it like he was born for this. But here's where life started getting complicated. Papa was dealing with something most people don't know about. He suffered from sickle cell anemia, a chronic blood disease that causes severe pain and can be life-threatening. This condition would leave him bedridden for days at a time, dealing with pain crises that most people can't even imagine. Instead of letting the illness defeat him, Papa used those bedridden days to perfect his craft. He set up a homemade studio in his grandma's closet. Just a compact computer, a microphone from Radio Shack, and a pair of headphones. He'd plug all that into his computer and record bars in that tiny closet, laying down the foundation for what would become his signature sound. His family remembers those early days clearly. His mom said he was the 4th out of 7 kids and the most musically inclined one. She loved music and she could see that Papa had something special. One time he wanted his own studio so bad that he went into his mom's closet, took everything out, and asked his sister to get him a tripod and everything else he needed. He turned that closet into his studio and just took off from there. By age 14, Papa released his first music video. Over the next few years, he went on a run dropping singles and mixtapes, slowly building a buzz in Jacksonville. But the streets were calling, and when you grow up in a place like Jacksonville, sooner or later you get pulled into that lifestyle whether you want to or not. As Papa got older, his lyrics started reflecting the gritty and violent environment he was surrounded by. He wasn't just rapping about the streets, he was living them. Papa, his brother Chi-Chi, and other rappers from the hood formed a crew called Cut Circle. They portrayed themselves as a music collective, but the cops believed they were a violent street gang directly tied to an Eastside Jacksonville gang called 1200. Cut Circle's main rivals were a group called Head First, and the beef between these two crews would leave bodies dropping on both sides. In 2015, Cut Circle even reached out to Action News Jax to tell their story. In an email to the news station, they said, "First and foremost, I would like to take the opportunity to state that Cut Circle Records is not a gang. Cut Circle Records is also in the process of putting a program together to provide kids help with homework and life decisions to keep them out of prison." So, is Cut Circle a gang? No, strictly a group of guys with a rap dream. But that email was sent just a week after a Cut Circle affiliate named Big Desi was shot and killed. The violence was real, no matter what they called themselves. The beef escalated in October 2014 when Head First was throwing a party on the north side of Jacksonville. 2 Cut Circle affiliates named Prosper and Tay slid through and allegedly started letting off shots. The ops returned fire, turning the party into a full shootout. When the smoke cleared, Prosper, Tay, and a Head First affiliate were all dead, with 2 women injured in the crossfire. A little over a week after Prosper and Tay died, Cut Circle paid tribute to them with a track called Lions, Tigers, and Bears. Head First responded with their own diss track against the dead ops and a Cut Circle member named Big Desi. They rapped, "Face shot as he hit the floor, calling his daddy as he hit the door." The rumors say Head First caught Big Desi lacking and shot him in the face. Head First was rumored to be behind that murder too, but no one was ever arrested. 2 days after Big Desi's death, Cut Circle allegedly got payback by killing Lenford Smith and Charles Eunice. Then in September 2017, a Head First affiliate named Lil Rap got ambushed in his car by 3 gunmen who shot him to death. Lil Rap was allegedly the one who killed Big Desi, and his death was rumored to be another getback from Cut Circle. This is the environment Lil Papa was navigating while trying to build his music career. Bodies dropping left and right, friends getting killed, enemies plotting revenge, and through it all, he was still that young man with sickle cell anemia, still dealing with chronic pain, still trying to make it out through his music. But nothing could have prepared Papa for what happened next. The shooting that would inspire Purple Hearts and haunt him for the rest of his life occurred when he was still a teenager. Papa, his brother Chichi, and their close friend were all targeted in a drive-by shooting that would change everything. The details of that night are burned into Papa's memory forever. In Purple Hearts, he opened up about the trauma. At night, I wonder why them bullets ain't hit me, why the fuck they miss me, rather be gone, take me out my fucking misery. Later in the track, he talked about how the cops tried to blame him for his friend's death. Detectives try to frame me, interrogation they blame me, wish I could take it back to the day that my mama made me. Papa and Chichi both survived, but their friend didn't make it. Watching someone you love die right in front of you, especially when you're just a teenager, does something to your mind that most people can't understand. Papa developed severe survivor's guilt, constantly wondering why he lived when his friend died, feeling like he should have been the one to go instead. The shooting left Papa with PTSD symptoms that would plague him for years. He couldn't sleep, constantly hearing gunshots in his head, always looking over his shoulder. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his friend's face. Every time he heard a car backfire, he thought it was gunshots. The hypervigilance was exhausting, but it was the only way he felt safe. But here's the crazy part. That traumatic experience became the foundation for his biggest hit. Purple Hearts was raw, emotional, and authentic in a way that most rap songs never are. Papa wasn't just telling a story. He was bleeding on the track, letting the world see his pain and vulnerability. The song put Lil Papa on the map in a major way. It got the attention of artists like Polo G and led to Papa signing a deal with Rule No. 1/Interscope Records in 2019. But success came with a price. Every time fans requested Purple Hearts, every time he had to perform it, Papa was forced to relive the worst night of his life. Imagine having to rap about your trauma, about watching your friend die, about wishing you were dead instead, and having to do it with a smile on your face because it's your biggest hit. That's the burden Papa carried every single day. While Papa was dealing with the aftermath of that shooting, he also found himself caught up in beef with other Jacksonville rappers. The most notable was his conflict with Foolio, who would later become one of the biggest names to come out of Jacksonville. Papa and Foolio were actually cool back in the day. They recorded songs together and seemed to have mutual respect, but something went down between them that eventually led to a fist fight at Foot Locker. According to Papa, people were comparing him and Foolio on social media, and Foolio commented that he was better, but Foolio told different versions of what happened. In a 2021 interview with Say Cheese TV, Foolio said the fight happened because Papa had been sneaking dissing him on tracks. Then a couple weeks later, he told Cam Capone News that Papa spotted him at the mall and was being disrespectful. No matter how it started, some of the fight was caught on video, and you can see Foolio and his 2 homies beating up Papa and the dude he was with. The fight wasn't too serious, and it didn't seem like anyone was really hurt, but it started a back and forth that would last for years. In August 2018, Foolio dropped a remix where he went after Ace, Quando Rondo, and Lil Papa. He called out Papa specifically, referencing Ace's dead brother and homies. Papa responded with his own track, and it went back and forth for a while. But then things got really disrespectful when Papa started taunting Foolio's dead brother 8-Ball during IG live sessions and on tracks like No Issues. Foolio came back hard, dissing Papa's homie Corbin Johnson, who was kidnapped and found murdered a year later. The beef escalated when Foolio allegedly pulled up to one of Papa's shows in Jacksonville to confront him, but Papa wouldn't come out to face him. In May 2021, Foolio claimed the beef wasn't that serious and said he wished the best for everyone because they all came from Jacksonville, a place that wasn't easy to make it out of. But even after that interview, Foolio went after Papa and his homies on tracks like List of Dead Ops. It wasn't until late 2021 that Foolio claimed he was done dissing dead people, calling it childish. Since then, the beef between Foolio and Papa had cooled off, but the damage was already done. Another rapper from Jacksonville named K Shorty also had issues with Poppa. K Shorty went after Poppa's dead brother Little League on tracks, rapping "Smoking on Meechie and League, they speaking on Teak." On another track he said, "I ain't worried about Gucci, I'm looking for Poppa." Poppa responded on "Disgust Me" with the line, "Talking about he looking for Pop, what the fuck he gonna do to him? The innocent little girl lost her life behind your shit, you ain't looking for them." That last line was a reference to the tragic death of 17-year-old Nandy Weiss in 2020. According to rumors, she dropped K Shorty off after a date, and two shooters popped out and started letting off shots. K Shorty was allegedly the target, but Nandy got caught in the crossfire and died. All of this beef, all of this violence, all of these deaths, it was adding to the weight that Poppa was already carrying from his own trauma. He was surrounded by death and violence, constantly having to watch his back, never knowing if he'd be next. Despite all the chaos around him, Poppa's music career continued to rise. In April 2022, Yo Gotti signed him to CMG, which should have been the biggest blessing of his life. CMG was one of the hottest labels in the industry, with artists like Moneybagg Yo, 42 Dugg, and ESTG. Gotti obviously saw Poppa's potential to be his next star, but success in the music industry came with its own set of problems. Poppa was now expected to tour nationally, perform his trauma-based songs nightly, and maintain a public image while privately struggling with depression, PTSD, and survivor's guilt. Around this time, Poppa also became involved with Rick Ross's daughter, and they had a child together. But according to sources close to the situation, Rick Ross didn't really rock with Poppa. The relationship was complicated, and it added another layer of stress to Poppa's already overwhelming life. Having a child should have been a blessing, but for someone dealing with severe depression and trauma, it can also feel like an enormous responsibility. Poppa wanted to be a good father, but he was battling demons that made it hard for him to even take care of himself. His album, Almost Normal Again, released in August 2025, was telling in its title alone. The phrase "almost normal again" implies that he wasn't normal, that he was trying to get back to normal, that he was almost there, but not quite. The word "again" suggests he had been normal before but lost it, probably referring to his mental state before the 2018 shooting. Throughout 2025 and into 2026, Poppa continued releasing music and building his fan base. His songs consistently dealt with themes of pain, loss, trauma, and depression. Tracks like "Pain All Gone," "Happy Tears," and "Mind Over Matter" weren't just catchy titles. They were glimpses into his mental state. But if you really listened to his music, the warning signs were everywhere. One fan later said, "If you actually listen to Lil Poppa music, he been so stressed out, I wish he would have kept going." Another fan wrote, "You understand what didn't have to be explained," meaning his fans heard the pain in every song. They knew he was struggling, but they didn't know how to help or that it would end like this. Poppa's Instagram bio had been saying, "First we're born, next we suffer, then we die, the end," for months. That wasn't just edgy rapper talk, that was literally his worldview. He saw life as nothing but suffering between birth and death with no hope for anything better. The exclamation marks after "the end" suggest finality and acceptance. This was his permanent bio, something he chose to have displayed on his profile at all times. It wasn't a lyric from a song or a temporary mood, it was his personal statement about life. One of the most chilling aspects of Poppa's story is how he seemed to predict his own death. In his lyrics, he rapped, "Pac died at 25, Biggie died at 24, and it made me nervous. I just turned the same age a couple days ago." This wasn't just a throwaway bar. Poppa was actively studying how his idols died, counting his age, and feeling nervous about reaching 25. He was born March 18, 2000, which means he turned 25 in March 2025. The fact that he was nervous about reaching the same age as Pac shows he had a premonition about dying young. The pressure of success was also taking its toll. Poppa had to perform songs about his trauma nightly. Purple Hearts, his biggest hit, was about the worst day of his life, but fans requested it at every show. Every time he performed it, he had to relive watching his friend die, had to rap about wishing he was dead instead. He couldn't take a break from touring without hurting his momentum. He couldn't stop performing his trauma-based songs because they were what made him famous. He was trapped in a cycle of having to constantly revisit his pain for the entertainment of others. The chronic illness was also wearing him down. Sickle cell anemia causes severe pain crises that can be debilitating. Poppa was dealing with physical suffering on top of his mental anguish. The combination of chronic illness and depression is extremely dangerous. The physical pain makes the depression worse, and the depression makes it harder to manage the physical illness. According to people close to him, Papa had been isolating himself more in recent months. Lil Duval revealed that they had talked a couple weeks ago, and Papa said, "I know I was supposed to have pulled up to Camp Duval, but I've been busy, but I'm definitely pulling up soon." Duval now wishes he would have forced it, recognizing that Papa was making excuses not to link up with people. This is classic behavior for someone who's planning to harm themselves. They start withdrawing from their support system, making excuses to avoid social contact, isolating themselves from the people who care about them. The weight of being one of the few survivors from his generation was also crushing him. As Lil Duval said, once the drill music died down, he was the only one left standing. Most of his friends were either dead or locked up. He survived when he shouldn't have, and that survivor's guilt was eating him alive. In the weeks leading up to his death, there were several warning signs that, in hindsight, paint a clear picture of someone who was planning to end their life. On February 13, 2026, just 5 days before his death, Papa released Out of Town Bay. The song was professional and polished, giving no indication of what was to come. But the title is eerie now, Out of Town Bay, because he literally died out of town in Atlanta, away from his home base in Jacksonville. The fact that he was still actively working and releasing music right up until the end follows a common pattern where publicly everything looks fine, while privately someone is falling apart. From the outside, his career was on the rise. He had shows scheduled for March, his streaming numbers were strong, and he seemed to be building momentum. But those closest to him were starting to notice changes in his behavior. The isolation was becoming more pronounced. He was making excuses not to link up with friends and collaborators. He was spending more time alone, which is dangerous for someone dealing with depression and suicidal thoughts. His social media activity was also becoming more concerning. That Instagram bio, "First we're born, next we suffer, then we die, the end," had been there for months, but people were starting to take notice. Fans were commenting on his posts, expressing concern about his mental state. The Rod Wave post that would become his final Instagram story was particularly telling. He chose to highlight specific lyrics. "Don't want to go to no club? No, I just want to chill. You know what happened? I know what happened. World never will." The first part, "Don't want to go to no club? No, I just want to chill," sounds like social withdrawal, which is a major warning sign for suicide. The second part, "You know what happened? I know what happened. World never will," suggests he was carrying secrets or burdens that he felt he couldn't share with anyone. The timing of this post is crucial. It was uploaded approximately 12 to 24 hours before he was pronounced dead, which means it was likely one of the last things he did before taking his own life. Now let me break down what we know about Lil Papa's final 24 hours, because understanding this timeline is crucial to recognizing how someone can seem fine on the surface while planning their own death. February 17, 2026, evening. Papa posted that Rod Wave Instagram story while riding in a car. The location appears to be Atlanta, though it's still not entirely clear when he arrived in Georgia or why he was there. He was from Jacksonville but died in Fulton County, Georgia, which raises questions about his state of mind. Why was he in Atlanta? Was it for recording sessions with CMG, label business, a personal visit, or did he go there specifically to be alone, away from family and friends who might try to stop him? The fact that he chose to be out of town for his final act might have been intentional. When someone is planning suicide, they often isolate themselves from their support system. Being in Atlanta meant his family in Jacksonville couldn't easily check on him, couldn't intervene if they sensed something was wrong. That Instagram story with Rod Wave playing was haunting in its specificity. He didn't just post any song, he chose Letting It Go and highlighted very specific lyrics. "Don't want to go to no club, no, I just want to chill," suggests he was withdrawing from social activities, from the party lifestyle that often comes with being a successful rapper. But it's the next line that's really chilling. "You know what happened? I know what happened. World never will." This suggests he was carrying secrets, burdens, or pain that he felt he couldn't share with anyone. It implies a sense of isolation and hopelessness, that he was dealing with something alone that the world would never understand. February 18, 2026, early morning hours. We don't have specific details about what Papa was doing in the early morning hours of February 18th, but based on the timeline and the eventual outcome, this is likely when he made his final decision. The hours between midnight and dawn are statistically the most dangerous for people contemplating suicide. It's when depression feels heaviest, when the world is quiet and dark, when negative thoughts can spiral out of control without distraction. Papa was alone in Atlanta, away from his support system, dealing with years of accumulated trauma, survivor's guilt, chronic pain from his illness, and the pressure of maintaining his career while privately falling apart. February 18, 2026, 11:23 a.m. At exactly 11:23 a.m. Eastern Time, Janarius Michael Willer was pronounced dead. The official cause of death hasn't been released publicly, but multiple sources close to the situation have indicated that this was death by suicide. The Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed the death, but the full autopsy results are still pending. What we do know is that a 25-year-old man who had everything to live for, a successful music career, a child, millions of fans who loved his music, felt that ending his life was the only way to stop his pain. The news of Lil Papa's death sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community and his fan base. Social media was flooded with tributes, disbelief, and people sharing their favorite Papa songs and memories. But what's most heartbreaking is how many people are now saying they saw the signs but didn't know how serious they were. Fans are going back through his music, his social media posts, his interviews, and recognizing patterns they missed in real time. One fan wrote, "Your music touched so many hearts, you understand what didn't have to be explained. We're born, we suffer, we die. Peace in paradise, Papa." They're literally quoting his Instagram bio back to him, showing that people knew he was in pain but didn't realize how deep it went. Another fan said, "If you actually listen to Lil Papa music, he been so stressed out, I wish he would have kept going." This shows that his fans heard the pain in his music. They knew he was struggling, but they thought the music was helping him cope, not realizing it might have been making things worse by forcing him to constantly revisit his trauma. Lil Duval's reaction was particularly telling. He said, "Now I wish I would have forced it," referring to Papa's excuse about being too busy to link up. Duval recognizes now that he should have pushed harder to see Papa, that the "I'm busy" excuse was actually a cry for help. The hip-hop community is also grappling with the broader implications of Papa's death. This is another young, talented rapper lost to mental health struggles, adding to a growing list that includes Mac Miller, Juice WRLD, and others who seem to have everything but were privately battling demons. Jacksonville specifically has lost too many young rappers to violence and mental health issues. The drill music scene that Papa came up in has left too many young men dead, traumatized, or struggling with survivor's guilt. The culture of constantly dissing dead friends, of turning trauma into entertainment, of glorifying violence while dealing with its psychological aftermath. It's taking a toll that we're only beginning to understand. Lil Papa's death exposes several critical issues that the hip-hop community and society as a whole need to address. Papa's biggest hit, Purple Hearts, was literally about the worst day of his life. He had to perform this song about watching his friend die, about wishing he was dead instead, night after night for paying audiences. We need to question whether we're asking artists to constantly relive their trauma for our entertainment. Many rappers who make it out of violent environments deal with survivor's guilt, wondering why they lived when their friends didn't, feeling guilty for succeeding while their homies are dead or locked up. This is a form of PTSD that the industry doesn't adequately address. Success doesn't cure depression, trauma, or mental illness. In fact, it can make things worse by adding pressure to maintain an image, to keep working, to never show weakness. Papa had millions of fans, a major label deal, and financial success, but none of that could heal his psychological wounds. The combination of chronic physical illness and mental health struggles is particularly dangerous. Papa's sickle cell anemia caused him constant pain, which can worsen depression and make life feel unbearable. The isolation of fame. Despite having millions of fans, Papa felt alone with his pain. Fame can be isolating. You're surrounded by people but feel like no one really understands what you're going through. The higher you rise, the further you have to fall. Warning signs. We ignore Papa's Instagram bio, his song titles, his lyrics, his behavior. The warning signs were everywhere. But we've normalized pain and depression in hip-hop to the point where we don't take them seriously until it's too late. His story also highlights the specific challenges facing Jacksonville's rap scene. The city has produced incredible talent, but it's also lost too many young artists to violence and mental health struggles. The environment that creates authentic, emotional music is often the same environment that traumatizes the artist creating it. Beyond the rapper persona, beyond the pain and the trauma, it's important to remember who Janarius Michael Willer really was as a person. He was a young man who started rapping in church at 6 years old, writing Christian rhymes to perform every Thursday. He was someone who turned his grandmother's closet into a studio because he was so passionate about music. He was a brother who looked up to Chi-Chi, a son who his mother described as the most musically inclined of her 7 children. He was someone who dealt with chronic illness with grace and determination, using his bedridden days to perfect his craft instead of giving up. He was a father who wanted to provide for his child and break cycles of trauma and poverty. He was an artist who refused to fake his way through his music, who bled on every track, who gave his fans authentic emotion even when it hurt him to do so. His music touched millions of people because it was real. He wasn't rapping about a lifestyle he didn't live or pain he didn't feel. Papa's legacy in hip-hop is significant. He proved that you could be vulnerable and still be respected, that pain rap could be commercially successful, that authenticity resonated with audiences hungry for real emotion in their music. His influence can be heard in the current generation of rappers who aren't afraid to discuss mental health, trauma, and emotional struggles in their music. He helped normalize conversations about depression and PTSD in hip-hop, even if he couldn't save himself. If Lil Papa's death teaches us anything, it's that we need to take mental health seriously in the hip-hop community and beyond. Success, money, fame, and talent don't protect you from depression, trauma, or suicidal thoughts. In fact, they can sometimes make things worse by adding pressure and isolation. We need to create better support systems for artists dealing with trauma. We need to stop glorifying pain without also promoting healing. We need to recognize that when someone constantly raps about death, depression, and wanting to die, they might not just be making music, they might be crying for help. The warning signs were there with Papa. The Instagram bio about life being nothing but suffering. The album title, Almost Normal Again. The constant references to death in his music. The isolation and withdrawal from friends, the Rod Wave post about not wanting to socialize, the prophecy about dying at 25 like Pac and Biggie. If you see these signs in someone you care about, don't wait. Don't assume they're just being dramatic or artistic. Reach out, check on them, get them professional help if needed. Mental health resources are available. National Suicide Prevention, Lifeline, 988. Crisis Text Line, text HOME to 741741. National Alliance on Mental Illness, 1-800-950-NAMI. Depression is treatable, trauma can be healed, PTSD can be managed, but you have to be alive to get better. Lil Papa's music will live on, touching new generations of fans who connect with his authenticity and emotion. His story will hopefully serve as a wake-up call about the mental health crisis in hip-hop and the importance of supporting artists as human beings, not just entertainers. Rest in peace to Janarius Michael Willer, known to the world as Lil Papa. Your pain is over now, but your music and your message will continue to impact lives. Jacksonville will never forget you. Hip-hop will never forget you, and neither will the millions of fans whose hearts you touched with your authenticity. To everyone listening, if you're struggling, please reach out for help. Your life has value, your story matters, and there are people who want to help you heal. Don't let the pain win.